I, for one, regard war as legalized murder. And I think most of the people look upon it in the same light and hope to see it abolished before the close of the present century. I see no reason why governments and individuals also cannot settle their disputes by a more humane process of arbitration. During our Civil War, it was well known that in many cases, after a victory, the soldiers of both armies would meet like old friends, shaking hands, and even on the outpost exchange coffee, tea, and sugar, showing that there were no animosities between them. It is safe to say that war is never brought on by men who carry the muskets. No, it must be laid at the doors of ambitious rulers and politicians. Henry Stevens Wiley.
The words of Henry Stevens Wiley, written nearly 50 years after the battle, reflected the feelings of many veterans. Having seen the horrors and realities of battle, they no longer carried the same youthful, romantic vision of war.
I had 5 bullet holes through my clothing and a flesh wound on my neck that drew blood, and that was near enough to satisfy me. Corporal Eli T. Marsh.
The 3 days of battle resulted in 51,000 killed, wounded, or missing in action from both North and South. Approximately 3,000 soldiers died of wounds within months of receiving them. The gruesome carnage the Second Vermont witnessed forever changed their lives.
The bloated corpses and stench and moans of despair, and pleadings to be taken off the field were awful to bear. Corporal Eli T. Marsh.
On July 4th, Ralph Sturdivant was assigned to a burial detail which interred all the 13th Vermont killed in action.
The dead lay scattered over the field where they fell, and the black and bloated condition of the corpses made it difficult to recognize in all cases an intimate comrade.
The Vermonters were buried near a stone wall on a slight elevation near their battle position of July 3rd. Private Sturdivant wrote, "Each grave of our comrades buried at Gettysburg was rudely marked with inscription, name of company and regiment, and date, carved on a cartridge box cover or pieces of boards from hardtack boxes so that their remains might be found, should such an occasion require it."
Today I have taken a tramp over the battlefield, and what horrors were revealed. I shall never forget the many ghastly sights which met my gaze, the dead in piles and heaps, horses and riders mingling in the same mass. In one trench dug by the rebels I saw 17 officers, and a number of other trenches were filled with the rebel dead but remained uncovered, showing that the enemy had commenced to bury its dead, but was obligated to effect a hasty retreat.
As news of the great battle spread, curious civilians descended upon the battlefield. Many wounded lay suffering on the battlefield for days after the battle. Medical facilities were overflowing with massive numbers of casualties. Many soldiers experienced both compassion and conflict for the wounded.
I went to a spring to get water for Company B, but before reaching them, my canteens would be empty, as I could not resist the call of the wounded rebels, whom I had to pass before reaching my company. But necessity, on the part of our boys, soon compelled me to turn a deaf ear to the gray and take water to our boys. Gilman G. Foster, drummer.
I espied, a short distance from where I was standing, 4 women on their bended knees with bandages and coolin' drinks, doing all in their power to lessen the pain and prolong the lives of those who'd fallen. God bless them, for they passed none by, not knowing or caring where they were born, at what altar they knelt, or whether they were clad in blue or gray. James K. Hartwell, 13th Vermont.
I was wounded by an iron ball from an exploded shell in the right side of the spinal column, supposed at the time to be mortal. Was taken from the field and placed in a barn which was used as a hospital, remained there 6 hours, examined by the surgeons, and they ordered me sent to Baltimore for surgical treatment. Rode all the way on top of a freight car lying face down, and did not arrive in Baltimore until the next day about 11 o'clock. Samuel W. Benjamin.
Benjamin survived his wounds and was later sent to the hospital in Brattleboro. The ball remained in his side until August 30th, 1899, and it was a source of pain and disability for over 36 years. It was taken out 8.5 inches below the place where it entered his body. In his diary entry of July 4th, 1863, Chandler M. Russell of Wilmington, Vermont, described the wounds of his comrades.
The wounded from Company F are in a house about 4 miles distant. Lieutenant Lawton had his arm amputated this morning at the shoulder. He was struck by a piece of shell, carrying away his ear at the same time. This seems too bad. Corporal Bayou wounded in the leg by grape shot. Dana Chandler in the thigh by a minie-ball.
News of the Great Battle and the list of those wounded appeared in the July 16th issue of the Vermont Phoenix. Among the wounded were Lieutenant Siren Lawton and Dana P. Chandler of Wilmington. It is believed that Lieutenant Lawton was moved to a farm just outside of Gettysburg Village, and that Henry Wellman of Wilmington, a member of the 16th Vermont Regiment, had stayed behind to care for him. On August 3rd, Oscar Lawton of Wilmington, brother of Siren Lawton, wrote his brother Watson in Sheffield, Illinois.
Brother Watson, with a sad heart and trembling hand, I seat myself to address you. On the 9th day of July, I received intelligence that Siren was seriously wounded. I immediately started in pursuit of him, went to Baltimore, then ascertained that he was at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, at a private dwelling where he would be well cared for. We arrived there about 10 a.m. and there learned that he died, Saturday, July 11th, about 24 hours before I got there. It was sad news to me, I assure you. But he is no more with us on earth. I probably miss him more than anyone else. Yours truly, Oscar H. Lawton.
On July 16, 1863, Russell Chandler of Wilmington made the following entry in his diary.
News of death of Lieutenant Lawton reached us. Very sad.
And on July 25th, Chandler Russell added this entry.
Mother and I went out to the funeral of Dana Chandler. His body arrived today. Poor boy, but a few folks there, 5 soldiers.
Dana P. Chandler, who had been listed in casualty reports as slightly wounded, and Lieutenant Siren B. Lawton, both died of wounds received during Pickett's charge. In 1938, on the 75th anniversary of the battle, the last of the surviving veterans met for what was for many their final reunion. The Gettysburg battlefield became one of the most sacred places of the Civil War. The experience of the men who fought here, both North and South, created a bond that lasted the rest of their lives. Over the years, they returned many times to meet old comrades and former enemies as old friends. William Henry Jackson, the young private with the 12th Vermont Regiment, who recorded Army life with his sketches, was among them. Jackson had become one of America's foremost frontier photographers, having been the first to take and have published photographs of Yellowstone Park. Jackson lived to know of World War I, the war to end all wars, and later, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. In June of 1942, he passed away at age 99 and is buried in the Arlington National Cemetery. Jackson's passing would mark the end of an era, for he was the last known surviving member of the Second Vermont Brigade.
Thank you.